It's Kristen here and welcome to another process video. And today I'm working on day 12 of 30 days of sketches with Christy's Beautiful Life. And it is a double layout, really pretty with kind of a wreath in the middle. It does call for 3 pictures. I end up using 4. And so I am using the Wildflower collection by Pretty Little Studio. The purple paper is actually a ledger pack that you could buy that was in the Wildflower collection, but it wasn't considered like their pattern paper. The wreath is a separate die cut piece that you can purchase separately, although I think they've got the wreath on one of the pattern papers, so if you wanted to fussy cut it out, you could as well. And I also am going to layer up some papers on the end because that's kind of how I'm interpreting the sketches, that there's some kind of additional paper, at least decoration, something down here on either end. And so I am pulling out one of the pattern papers from the Wildflower collection and putting it on either end. I'm going to get the wreath adhered down. I always feel like this is a bit of a painstaking process for me anyways, like with something kind of oddly shaped like this, because I want to make sure I get it lined up. Although I use 3 ring binders, so it's not like the pages will be right next to each other, so even if it was like off just a little bit, it would be okay. You probably wouldn't, notice it unless you took the, actually took the layout out and put them side by side. But because I'm a bit of a perfectionist, I have to make sure that it's all lined up. Sometimes there's times where I don't care so much. Like I just recently did a Harry Potter layout, which I don't think I will put it on YouTube, but it's not one that I've put up yet. Like I put it side by side and I realized like one of the papers wasn't like flush across, and I'm like, you know what, at the end of the day, that doesn't really bother me so much unless you're really looking at it. But I probably could have cut it down a little bit. But quite honestly, there's sometimes where you're just like, you just want to get a layout done, so. And I'm going to start going ahead and getting these end pieces put on there. The Wildflower collection is really good for Easter / spring layouts. So there's like a lot of Easter bunnies and Easter themed elements in it, but it's not predominantly Easter. So there's actually quite a bit of pieces in there that are just, spring mix, a lot of florals, butterflies, things like that. So it's a really good collection for both spring and Easter layouts. And so I'm going to start pulling in some ephemera. I decide that love will be my title. Now the title technically goes, at least according to the sketch, is supposed to go up in the left-hand corner of the first page. But since I've got a picture there, I do have to adapt where I put my title. And so I decided I like it to on the right page next to the bottom picture. And then I'm going to start pulling in some floral pieces. And I wanted to add florals here, but I also didn't want to impose too much onto the wreath because I feel like that's kind of, I don't want to because I feel like if I build up too many florals next to the pictures, then the wreath will start to kind of get lost, and I don't want that to happen. So I do end up going through quite a bit of ephemera. I really like some of these pieces in here, but they just do not work with that wreath being in the center. So I love purple. I'm a huge purple girl, so I am really excited to have pieces that have a lot of purple in them. And so the Wildflower collection was definitely had a lot of purples to them, which I feel like a lot of collections don't have a lot of purple. So again, just trying to work in some florals there without imposing on the wreath, which I was being super picky, just because that wreath's so beautiful. I just did not, I wanted, emphasis on the pictures, but, you know, not to take away from the wreath either. So, which is kind of, sometimes it's kind of a difficult task. And really with the wreath and the floral paper on either end, it really doesn't need too much embellishing. So I really try hard to find kind of simpler pieces that'll put some emphasis back onto the picture, because the wreath is so eye-catching. You obviously don't want to lose the pictures because of the wreath. So, which normally, like with a wreath die cut like this, I almost always, I love wreath layouts. I really do. I try not to do too many of them because I tend to gravitate towards them, because of course, like, you know, it's kind of simpler layout to do. You can just slap the wreath on there and then put your picture. Usually I would always put my picture in the center, and then, you know, build up on top of the wreath a little bit just to give it a 3D effect, and, you know, you're done. So so this is a little bit different way of thinking of how to do a wreath like this. So I really love this sketch just because it is making me use a wreath in a different way from what I usually would use it for. So again, trying to pull in some pieces, try to put a little emphasis back on the pictures. Now I could have moved the pictures over a little bit further just to have a little bit more gap there between the wreath and, you know, have a little bit more purple space there, but I also don't want to cover up all the pretty florals on the paper that I chose to put on the ends of the pages. So it was kind of like a, you know, it's one reason why I was being so picky, is because it was kind of a little bit of a balancing act to try to figure out something here. And I apologize, this video is a little bit longer, just because it is a double layout, so that usually those videos will probably always be longer. And quite honestly, when I watch videos on YouTube, because there's so many people I subscribe to and so many wonderful creators out there, I want to try to fit in as many videos as possible in a day. So I actually will speed people's videos up and watch them 1.5, you know, unless there's like a new technique or something that I see that I want to really watch. I'll you know, watch at normal speed, but I usually will watch everybody's videos sped up. So please feel free to speed me up. I already do speed up these videos in my iPhone iMovie app, but then a lot of time I do leave in a lot of these collections as I'm working with them, because for me, I like watching process videos, because then it helps me to view a little bit differently, like how to use embellishments. Like, people will use embellishments in ways that I never thought to use them. And so I learn quite a bit that way. But then I also see collections that people work with that I really love, that I end up going and buying. So I like to see the collections as people work with them too, because then that way you get a good idea of what's in them and what, you know, what you could potentially buy if you're interested in them. So these little border pieces are just so stinking cute. So I decided to put one down on the left hand, and then I will end up working one in. I'm wanting to say, do I put one in the top, on the top picture? I think I do. So this collection is heavily spring. There's like a lot of bunny rabbits in it. But there's a lot of, like, if if you're not big into scrapbooking Easter, which I sometimes struggle scrapbooking Easter, but some of it too is the fact that I don't have a ton of Easter paper. So this actually is a nice balance, because it's Easter and it's springy, so you can do, some Easter layouts, but also do, while doing spring. And technically her pictures were taken in the summer because she was born at the end of July. But the reason why I chose this collection is because, her little purple swaddle and her little purple headband. So I felt like this collection was perfect for this, to do a layout of her. So And again, you see me still working in florals here. And there's quite a few that I like, but I'm just like back and forth on. I do like this one that I put up here because I really feel like, you know, it's put some emphasis back on the picture, but it doesn't take away from the wreath either. So I was really trying hard not to impose too much on the wreath. And I didn't want to cover up a lot of the wreath. I didn't want to cover up a lot of the background paper either on either ends, because they're so pretty that it's something that you kind of, you want the paper to kind of do the work for you, and if you can, add minimal embellishments. At least that was kind of the task I was trying to achieve here. And sometimes it's really difficult. Like if you have really, at least for me, if you have really pretty paper, sometimes it's hard to pull it out of your stash and use it because it's so pretty to look at. Like I don't want to ruin it. I guess it's like, I don't know. Sometimes I put pressure on myself to really make it look nice, which I want every layout I do to look nice. But sometimes with like these papers that already have like a lot of, I find myself with like 49 and Market a lot doing this, Pretty Little Studio a lot doing this, where it's just the paper is so pretty that on its standalone that, you know, you really a lot of time don't need to add too much to the papers, because there's already so much detail on them that I find myself sometimes having a really hard time with papers that have more detail and kind of like, you know, where they have it look distressed in that already. So sometimes I have a hard time figuring out where to put embellishments that's not going to cover up some of that stuff, because there's a lot of elements to a lot of these papers that I really like, and I don't want to cover them up. I still want them to show. So I think that's maybe what I kind of run into. Now these rainbow pieces are just so pretty. I do like that one up there in the corner, but I think I end up moving it. I don't even know if I end up using that one. I might go with a couple smaller ones. Yes, there's the smaller ones. Those are actually pieces that came in the Wildwood collection, and they're just like little punch outs. And it had 4 different rainbows in the punch out. And it's a more muted rainbow, so it works really nicely with the collection. And I really like the rainbow up there, but I think the reason why I end up pulling it off is because I feel like it's maybe a little bit too much up there, that it's, you know, taking too much attention away from the wreath, the pictures, and all that. So I do pull out another smaller rainbow, and I'm going to try to figure out where I want this tucked. So I definitely want to work in another one as well. And see, I go back to the big one because I'm like, I really like that one. Can I make it work? And so I do end up getting a smaller one in, and I'm going to tuck it in down. I think I could leave it down here. Okay, so I'm going to start adhering everything down, making sure to get my T-square ruler out to make sure that, you know, everything's good and lined up. And then I'm going to start getting the embellishments glued down here. And I always usually will, like once I start getting my photographs adhered down, I'll usually put my clusters back, not necessarily like in the exact same spot where they were at, but kind of in the general vicinity, just to make sure that that's kind of what I like before I go ahead and glue it down. So it's like almost like checking my work again. What do they say? Checking it twice. Making the list once and checking it twice. So that's kind of, I do notice that's one reason why it takes me so long to scrapbook, because I'm somebody that will, I like to be, I don't necessarily plan ahead my layouts or anything, but like as I'm doing them, like I will make for sure that I really like the clusters where they're at. So I will lay them out a couple times, adhere the pictures down, put the clusters back on without adhering them down, just to make sure that's kind of where I like them, and then start adhering everything down. So it's like I do the work like times 3. So I think that's why layouts take me so long, because I'm a bit of a perfectionist. You know, and you spend money on this stuff, like you really want to make sure you like it where it's at. And I felt like I wanted to add just a little bit more up here, so I'm just kind of looking at this to decide if I want to add more. I'm going to work in a couple butterflies here. So at the end of the day, butterflies can cover a multitude of sins. Like I will use them to like cover up weird gaps and things, you know. So I'm kind of surprised that I went with the cluster that I did up here, because it does kind of take away from the wreath a little bit. But I think the reason why I decided to is because it was looking a little naked over here. I felt like the heart was too far away from where the floral cluster was down below. And I'm like, you know what, honestly, if a little bit kind of comes up and goes over the wreath a little bit, it doesn't bother me too much. So plus I kept going back to the flowers that I'm currently gluing down, the ones with like the purple, I don't know what those would be considered. They almost like look like clover, you know, buds on them. But anyways, I kept going back to that and putting that back there. So I'm like, you know what, let's just go ahead and put it on there. Like I like the look of them. You know, it's not going to be perfect. If I like the look of it, just do it. Don't question it too much. Going to adhere down another little butterfly, and I also put a bee up there. Put another butterfly. That's what I love about butterflies. Like they're really good at covering weird gaps and spaces in your layout. So I'm going to set that one aside so that way I can start working on this one. Get the pictures adhered down. And I really, do quite a bit of adhesive on my stuff just because I do want it to stick. This adhesive was actually stuff that I purchased from Amazon. It was kind of a cheapie. It came with like 8 of them, and I had to buy those because my ATG had ran out of tape, and for some reason I usually can order it and get it within a couple of days, but for some reason it was like back ordered, so it took a little bit to get to me, so I ended up buying those. I have to say the adhesive's like, meh, it's okay on it. So I'm not sure how long it'll last. Hopefully. So that's one reason why I really put a lot of adhesive on the backs of those photographs too, because I'm like, I don't know how good the adhesive is on this. So I want to get another little bit of leaves tucked in over here, just kind of give this part a little bit more dimension. Get some more butterflies. And that's just to give the wreath a little bit more of a 3D effect, because I contemplated maybe trying to find a few florals and popping them up on foam. But again, like the wreath was just so pretty on its own. I didn't want to add anything to it. I felt like a couple butterflies would be enough. And then I put a couple hexagons up there just because I liked how they looked, and it was a little bit something different. And then of course, a pretty purple flower up there. And then that's the other border that I was talking about. So that, I think I got like a pack of borders, and it came with quite a bit. I mean, any of the ephemera that you order from Pretty Little Studio, it comes with a lot. So, and I wanted to tuck in a tag somewhere because I wanted to at least put the date on. I always usually will try to put the date somewhere. I also decided that the flower just looks like it's kind of hanging off weird, like it's just kind of like haphazardly stuck there. So I wanted another little bit of layering over it. Anyways, so I always will try to get like the date, typically who's in the picture, which obviously she's the only girl that I have. So I don't know if I write her name on it, but I always like to put a date on the layout. So I got that tag stuck in over there so I could put the date. And here are some close-up shots. I think this turned out so beautifully. I love the collection. I'm a purple girly all the way. And Pretty Little Studio always has really beautiful collections. Thank you for coming by to watch another process video. I really appreciate the likes, comments, and anybody that would love to subscribe to me. I would love to have you. Thanks for stopping by.